While retirement is generally seen as a time of relaxation and self-focus, God calls us to love, serve, and help others for a lifetime. He has been preparing us for this retirement season, literally our entire lives. In retirement, countless Christians enter a state of spiritual dormancy, not knowing how they are called to have an impact for God's kingdom. The Retirement Reformation seeks to encourage and empower the 50 million Christians approaching or in retirement to embrace the calling God has been preparing in them. When the world says it's time to stop, you can begin to have your greatest impact. Welcome to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation, where our goal is to journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him.
Reaching out to the 50 million Christ followers in America who are already or approaching retirement, you've tuned into iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece for the Retirement Reformation, online at retirementreformation.org. I'm your host, Jim Brangenberg, and of course, I'm joined every episode by Bruce Brines, but the founder of the Retirement Reformation. We'd love for you to download the app. Go to your local app store. You don't have to walk very far. It's in your pocket probably. And download the Retirement Reformation app or check us out on Facebook, Retirement Reformation. Resources, sometimes there's just too many choices. Sometimes there's just not enough. And when it comes to retirement, there's only one place to go, the Retirement Reformation website. And by divine appointment, you've tuned in to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece for the Retirement Reformation, as today we focus on some of the tools that we've got out there on our website and on our app that are available to you to help you transform your mind and reform your mind about the way you think and the way you act and your purpose in retirement. As always, Bruce Brines was here to join us. Bruce, I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
I am too, because I think it's going to help a lot of people. When you get down to, it's one thing to talk about things in theory, but then when you talk about it in actual practice and it is personal to you, and there are tools that are available that will simply make a big difference for you. We know that to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But we also know that you are unique and individual, and that each one of us have different paths and different ways that we step into the issues of retirement. We think that the ones that we're going to talk about here shortly and for the rest of this time are just simply part of the resources that we will continue to develop as God brings us, and we rub shoulders with you and say, you know, what I really need is another size nail. And then we'll have that available for you too. So we're excited not only where we are, where we've been, but where we're going.
And if you happen to have any suggestions or you're out on our website and you're like, hey, but have you ever thought about this? There's always a way to contact us right on our website, retirementreformation.org. All right, Bruce, on the last podcast, we talked about the app. We talked about membership. We talked about the manifesto, the prayer walk, the prayer mate app. We talked about webinars and the weekly blog, devotional blog. Let's focus this time on the books that you've written, because you've got 4 books out there and a 5th one on its way. Let's talk about what's in each one of those books. Let's start with your series. You've got Finding Freedom, Moving Forward, Charting Your Course, and number 4 is going to be called?
Well, at this point, we're calling it Champions.
Champions, okay.
We're struggling just a little bit with that, and the bottom line is it will give you examples of how people make a difference.
All right, so let's talk about Finding Freedom. If somebody downloads a copy of Finding Freedom or buys a copy of Finding Freedom, what are they going to learn?
Well, that's a wonderful way to be able to start the conversation. Matter of fact, you'll see at the top of the book, it talks about the first in a future-funded ministry, because when we talk about the financial side of things, we call it a future-funded ministry. When we talk about all the other issues, our key word usage is to be faithful for a lifetime. And so in Finding Freedom, you're going to find that introduction to faithful for a lifetime. What does it mean? What does freedom in Christ mean within the context of being a Christ follower and entering into that first, second, third, or fourth stage of retirement?
Okay, you threw this thing in there. We got to talk about it. This future-funded ministry. So what you're saying is that people have been saving all their lives for retirement and Social Security. They've been investing in Social Security all their lives, and now they've got an opportunity where they don't have to go to work full-time anymore, and yet they're still being called to ministry. You're still being called to go. Their calling didn't retire with them, yet they're going to get paid even without going to the office or the workplace or the store or wherever that was that they were working before. That's what you mean by future funded ministry. They're missionaries without having to raise support.
And here's one of the places where the Reformation in our thinking actually starts, to realize that regardless of our career, our vocation, our job, whatever it is, that we are in God's eyes, and as a Jesus follower, we are all ministers together. And when we talk about ministry and being ministers, it means that we represent him in everything that we do, and that our calling is to build the kingdom, and to do that by reflecting the uniqueness that is Jesus Christ and what it is that we are to do. So the finding freedom is that first introduction into those kinds of thought processes that then change us, will reform where we are.
All right. So the next book is Moving Forward.
Well, you know what happens once you've got the idea, you got to have a plan. We know that God has a plan for what? You're in my life. That's what he has a plan for. He has a plan for his world when he created it. And so it talks all about what does it take to be able to plan for the future, and why is that planning important? And so the first step is kind of, oh my goodness gracious, I didn't understand that. Now, the next thing is, okay, how do I plan to be able to step into this next stage of my life? And then we got the third book,
Charting Your Course.
Well, then you got to take some action, because you can think about it, you can talk about it, but in fact, what you got to do is do something about it. That's the reason that Christ brought his 12 disciples and many more disciples together and trained them, and then upon his ascension, sent them out into the world. And the part that's amazing is they had reformed thinking at that point. They understood who he was, what they were to do, how they were to do it, where they were to go, and who was going to help them. Okay, well, there we go. It's that last stage then of the hands-on of who has he created me to be and what has he called me to do.
And it's really, it almost is, it's a book with a workbook inside, because it asks a lot of questions and asks you to do a lot of thinking, and it asks you to just, okay, pray about this. Don't read the next chapter yet. Pray about this. See what God is saying. I mean, it is a powerful book, and it's, and that series, as you said, you're still writing. You got number 4 coming out, Champions. We'll get to hear about that one when that one's out. But you then took time and stepped back and wrote a book called The Retirement Reformation. What's that one about?
Retirement Reformation is designed to be able to invite you into a conversation. And that conversation will begin to expand your understanding of the issues, the challenges, and the opportunities that God makes available to us as we enter into these various stages. It was the time when through the power of the Holy Spirit, he was able just to bring all of those thoughts together in a way so that you have a couple of choices now in the books we've talked about. You can go through the series, the Future Funded Ministry series. It has a very nice sequential flow to it. Or you can start with the Retirement Reformation and say, let me just try and get the big picture and understand what this is all about. Matter of fact, we're struggling right now with what's the next book in that series as we continue to learn more. So when we wrote that book a couple of years ago, we've continued to learn about more issues, about more subjects. That means that we need to bring more resources in God's understanding of how it is that we are to respond to those challenges in our lives. Just as one example, there can be 5 generations alive at the same time, and you've heard us talk about that on our podcast. Man, the complexities that brings, the challenges that brings, and to find, because we don't have any models, we got to go back to Methuselah to go find that kind of stuff. Now we've got 5 generations alive, those interactions, how do we represent Christ? How do we come together as a family? How do we deal with difficult family issues? That's just one example of the thing that has just continued to explode. Just one other one is the challenges that come from the anxiety and fear and loneliness of, gray divorce, gray bankruptcy, gray opioid addiction, gray suicide. So those real issues. And so now to be able to find ways that we will find ways to bring resources to address those issues also. But the Retirement Reformation, between the manifesto and that book, if you just want a place to start, those are two great places to begin to step into this issue and kind of get the idea of what it is. We also have questions in there, and we have a study guide. So you could bring your book club together, and you could, in fact, go through that book and be able to discuss the subjects that it raises, and begin for each person in the group to begin to find their way to what God is calling them to do.
And the beautiful thing is, Bruce, even in the year since we started this podcast, there's no question today that our retired generations understand that their wisdom is needed, because things haven't gotten better in the last year. And what they've seen is a bunch of youngsters running away with this great country that we have. And this great country needs Jesus more now than ever. And we've got 30 to 50 million Christ-following retirees that have all the time in the world to start working on it today. You're listening to I Retire for Him with your host, Jim Brangenberg and Bruce Brynsma. We'll be right back with segment 2 with John Hirst, talking about the history behind the small group study that we've got coming out. We'll be right back.
There is a move of God in our country called the Retirement Reformation. It's not enough to sit in the grandstands of life, watching the days go by with leisure as a reward. Join us back on the playing field of life, discovering God's plan for you and building purpose and intentionality into every day. Go to retirementreformation.org and click on the Resources tab. Check out our prayer walk and start ministering to your neighbors through prayer today. Connect with your ongoing journey by downloading the prayer app at retirementreformation.org. Click on the Resources tab. Make the journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him. Now let's get back to the show.
Hey, welcome back to I Retire for Him. As every middle segment of an I Retire for Him podcast, we always bring on somebody that's got some perspective to share on retirement, and today we're talking with John Hirst. He's had intimate involvement in lots of the tools that are available for you on the Retirement Reformation website and, of course, the Retirement Reformation app. John, on the last show, we talked about the prayer walking app, the prayer app that you encourage people to use as they're trying to figure out, well, if they're going to move during retirement, how to figure out where they should move and how to prayer walk around that. I love that perspective. Thank you for sharing that. I want to make sure we move on to some of the other tools, because I'm sure you've got some other tools that you're excited about. And we're talking about Retirement Reformation's website, retirementreformation.org, retirementreformation.org, or in the App Store, Retirement Reformation. So, John, what are some of the other great tools that you love that you've helped Retirement Reformation develop?
Well, one of them that's coming soon that I've actually just been working on is a small group study curriculum, which I'm really excited about, that takes you through about 8 or 9 weeks of really thinking through what's my mission and vision in life? What are the skills I have? Where am I at in life? And how does that then apply to retirement? So I think one of the, you've got things that you're doing that are very meditative and contemplative, like the prayer side. Then you have things you're doing around studying, right? Saying, God, help me to get into your word and understand what you think about these various stages of my life. And, we do that, in the early parts of our life as we're heading off to college. We do that as we're in our career, raising our family. Why shouldn't we also do that as we look at retirement?
So tell us what that looks like, to put that into action. The study, I love the fact that this study is being developed. Is it for like small groups at church, or small groups in the neighborhood, or small groups in an assisted living community? Who's it for, and who's it going to help? And what are some of the specific things you're going to delve into, and what scriptures apply to that? Okay, that's like 7 questions. Sorry.
No problem. So what we're going to do with that study really is we're going to encourage groups that could be existing small groups in a church. It could be groups that form. Maybe there's a senior Sunday school class at a church, or just a group of friends that want to go through something together. So it really could be a lot of different forms that it takes. But it's really designed to ask some of the tough questions. One of the things that Bruce says all the time, I'm sure you've heard about it, is so many times we do planning around the financial side of retirement, but related to what we're going to do with our time and our energy and our passions, we don't tend to think about that a lot. And so when someone asks us the question, we tend to get a little, just like a train is coming at us, right? Deer in the headlights kind of a look, right? We don't know necessarily what we're going to do. And so a lot of times you have to do the work, right? And I think what the study guide does, or the small group study material, is it helps you do the work of saying, okay, if this is what God's called me to, if this is how I'm made up, if this is what I'm passionate about, then let me start to create and design what that means for my retirement years.
I love that. I love that. That's so fantastic. And what I think is great is that you're getting people to think. You're getting people to think about the tools, and you're getting people to think about that there is purpose in their retirement. And I think that is just fabulous. Because that's part of what the that is what all the Retirement Reformation is all about: reforming how we think about retirement. So when you look at other tools, because out there in the Retirement Reformation, we've got the manifesto, we've got the study that you're about ready to release, we've got several books, we've got some videos, we've got some other training. There's some other tools out there. What other cool tools have you gotten involved in and putting out there on the website?
Well, one of the other ones that I really like is we have a spiritual retreat guide. One of the things that to the point of the small group material, one of the things that is really hard for us in today's society is to stop and take time to reflect. We're not very good at that. Our lives are very busy. We've got a lot of things going on. So we actually have a whole guide designed to help you to take a spiritual retreat and to get away for a weekend, either by yourself, with your spouse, and really start to say, okay, what do we want next? What is the right next move for us, either before retirement, going into it, or maybe one of the stages during the retirement time. And by going through and giving people some scriptures and some activities and some ideas and some content to wrestle with, we're really hoping that we could help people to stop and really consider what God's up to in their lives. Because you and I both know, when we stop and really ask God what he's up to, he tends to reveal things that we just weren't on our radar. Right?
Powerful words. When we stop and ask God, then he'll tell us things that will blow our minds apart. But that's part of the deal. So often, John, we get so busy, and you're in your 40s, I'm in my 50s. We're not near retirement yet, but we have a struggle with stopping and asking, and then, of course, the listening part. How have you perfected that in your life?
I think there's just a few disciplines that have really helped me. Of course, you've got your personal devotional time. You've got spending time in nature. Taking time to be outside and talk to God as you're hiking. When I lived in Colorado, I did a lot of hiking, and that was a great time to really stop listening to my phone or the TV or the news and spend more time focused on God. I think also one of the things that I found to be very, very helpful is hearing God's voice through other people, really listening to people who I value and esteem, and asking what they think I should be thinking about or processing or going through, and getting input like that. I think one of the keys to listening to God is listening to others, because God tends to speak a lot of times through the people around us.
Very, very powerful words. It's so important, because a lot of times, and especially if that others might be our wife, if you happen to be married, because our wives seem to hear the voice of God more clearly than we do. Final question, John, before we let you go in this second segment. You're 20 plus years away from what they say is retirement age. Speak some wisdom to those that are ahead of you, who are already contemplating retirement and retirement. Speak some encouragement to them today about what you think they've got ahead of them that's exciting.
One of the things that as I've been mentored by many people in their 60s and 70s, I've realized that one of the great privileges that people that are currently in their 60s, going into their 70s, going into whatever retirement looks like for them, one of their great privileges is the opportunity to mentor younger leaders, younger people, whether my age in the 40s or even younger in their 30s or 20s. And the people in their 20s and 30s, especially the millennials and the Gen Z, they are desperate and desiring mentors.
Mm-hmm.
And there are just so many opportunities for people going into retirement to mentor in a dozen different ways, whether through formal programs, informally through friends and networks. But I would just encourage people, look for 2 or 3 people that you can actively be mentoring and encouraging, meeting with every week, every month, whatever it might be, because that is one of the greatest blessings that someone can be who has had experience in years of working and learning and living that others haven't gotten the chance to have quite yet.
Yeah, and Bruce wrote about that in his book, Retirement Reformation. I wrote about it in my book, iRetire4Him. And Grant Skeldon wrote a book to the boomer and traditionalist generations called The Passion Generation, all about, hey, boy, we desperately want you. We millennials want you to invest in us. Let us run alongside you. It's a great conversation. John Hirst, thank you so much for being on iRetire4Him. Thanks for sharing your perspective. Thanks for making such a huge investment in the Retirement Reformation website, the tools, the application, and all the stuff that we've got to be able to play with in order to figure out what God's got for us next in retirement. Thank you, John Hirst.
My pleasure. Good to be on.
We'll be right back with more on iRetire4Him.
You've spent decades making financial plans for your retirement years. But have you done any life planning? God has a plan for your life, and it includes living out your faith in your retirement years with meaning, purpose, and intentionality. Go out to retirementreformation.org and click on our Resources tab. Download a copy of the book, Charting Your Course, and get started with life planning today. Simply download a copy of Charting Your Course at retirementreformation.org. Make the journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him. Now let's get back to the show.
Hey, welcome back to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece for the Retirement Reformation. Bruce, that was an amazing conversation with John, and just he laid it out, first of all, as a guy in his 40s, of how is working alongside the Retirement Reformation impacted how he looks at retirement. But I also love the fact that he talked about the small group study that you guys are about ready to roll out for people all across the country to be able to really dig deep into this. When do you think we'll see that hit the website?
Well, I think we'll see it hit the website and and make it available probably in about 6 weeks. I think is probably the time.
So the fall of 2021, it's going to be out there. That's fantastic. All right,
but let me just kind of give you a little background of that.
Okay.
And so one of the things that we've learned is that as seniors, often we learn best in community. Sometimes we learn best just for our own individual study, our own individual Bible study, our own individual prayer walk, and so on. But what we're learning is that there's a great desire for us to be able to come together in community and to learn in that context. And so this study that we've been working on for, it seems like forever, but at any rate, that study is designed to have a facilitator and for a group to come together of, probably 3 to 7 either people, or it could be 3 to 7 couples that will do work and be challenged to be able to answer questions and be able to understand and about who they are, what the opportunity is, and so on. And so that over a period of about 11 weeks, they in fact to go from, I know there's something more for us, to understanding what that is and how then to take the next steps so that we will be changed in our mind, our thinking, and then have that action plan. And so it's kind of an expanded version of those 3 books that we talked about in our last segment.
And there was one book we didn't get to yet, a brand new book released by me on retirement. We call it iRetire4Him. Imagine where we got that title, Unlock God's Purpose for Your Retirement. Bruce, I took a different perspective because I'm not a retired guy yet, but I've lived in Florida for 20 years. So I'm surrounded by millions and millions of retirees. And what I saw was a lot of pain, a lot of hopelessness, a lot of depression, a lot of discouragement, and a lot of Christ-following retirees that are going, what what the heck? I don't know. I mean, I can only shop so much. I don't need any more seashells. I can't play tennis anymore because I'm too old. And they're like, what can I do? And I wrote that book to them to say, here's some things, some practical things you can do in your neighborhood. Just practical things like plant yourself in a neighborhood not full of retirees, but how about plant yourself in a neighborhood full of young people who don't have any old people in their lives, or as we call them, chronologically superior folks. So the book is just full of practical tactics like, okay, get in a neighborhood full of people that need your wisdom, and teach them how to cook, teach them how to clean, teach them how to take care of kids, offer to watch their kids, develop a relationship with these young families, because most of them don't have access to grandparents, and many of them don't have access to parents. And we just wrote all about just the practical nature of here's some things you can do to get dirty and use your calling in your retirement. And that's the book, I Retire for Him.
Well, Jim, when you think of the gaps that are there and where people are, one of the most difficult pieces after you have that aha moment is that there is something more, is to be able to go, gee, I don't have a path to follow. I don't know. I can't even think of things. And frankly, the way that you wrote your book and the way that comes in there, if I was to, and I do, if I'm advising someone, I'd say, look, start with the Retirement Reformation Manifesto. Go aha.
Amen.
Secondly, just go ahead. It's free. Sign up for that early membership and look at those resources. But the next thing you do is read Jim's book. And because that will open your mind to what the possibilities, the kinds of things that are out there, that it's not hopeless, it's not useless, and it's important. Then go to the study that we're talking about. Work through that with 5 or 6 of your buddies over a period of time. And I will guarantee you that your life will be changed. It will never be the same again. You will be a different person, and you will be a different person in Christ. And so, again, take the manifesto, become a member, read Jim's book. Then as we get this course out, bring your buddies together and go through that. My goodness gracious, I cannot think of a more life-changing opportunity that is laid out sequentially for you, and that I guarantee you that if you come back a year from now, we will have you on the program because you're going to have your story that we want to hear.
Bruce, all these resources available at retirementreformation.org. A lot of the tools are available on the Retirement Reformation app. We'll get a couple more. There's many people, Bruce, that may just be signing into the podcast for the very first time. Well, this is podcast number 46. So you've missed a whole bunch of them where we've talked about a lot of great things, and you can go back and listen to all of them. Those resources will be available long after you and I, Bruce, are gone. And we want to make sure people know. Share them. You can get them on any of the major podcast apps and get them downloaded and shared. But you can also just sign up for the monthly blog from Retirement Reformation. You can sign up on iRetire4Him for our weekly blog and be able to get access. The links can get sent to you of what we're doing. So there's podcast.
One of the things that I wanted to share, Jim, was that Judy and I are listening to books on Audible. And so I was, listening to a book a week ago, and I got thinking about, I wonder if our podcasts are available on the Audible podcast station. So I clicked on that, and sure enough, there you go. You had them all right there. And so, you can't escape if you want to find them.
Well, have you done audiobooks for any of your books already?
Not yet. That's one of the next things that's online. We need to do that.
So we did something fun with I Retire for Him. Everybody that contributed to I Retire for Him, so my wife, me, my father-in-law, Ted, who wrote 20 stories of living out his faith in his retirement. And then we had several ministries write encouraging notes to retirees. All of them read in their own voices. So that's out there, available on Audible. It's also available digitally, and I know your books are available digitally. Bruce, we got some other stuff. You've got some videos on your website. What are some of those videos about?
Well, some of those videos are just simply videos of opportunities that God has provided for me and for the message of the Retirement Reformation to be able to bring to different audiences. And so we've been able to capture those videos. So it's a variety of topics and circumstances, but all revolves around the message of the Retirement Reformation.
Okay.
One of the things that I'm excited about is the Retirement Reformation weekends that are going to be coming up. And so for your church to be able to evangelism service on Friday night, bring in the neighborhood, bring in the neighbors, bring in all the seniors that haven't gone to church for, 20 years. And let's have an evangelistic service and let's talk to them about the Retirement Reformation. Let's show up again on Saturday and let's go through some really practical things that answer real life questions for people. And so, again, as we say, the resources continue to grow, but those videos that you're talking about come from a variety of those kinds of experiences.
And of course, you're available at any point in time. If somebody wants to bring you into their church, into their Rotary group, into their Lions group, into any of those kind of groups, you're willing to talk about retirement reformation anywhere in the country. And I'm available too to be your sidekick. So we go anywhere you want us to go. And the next time you have an event and you really want to have people to get challenged about living out their faith and living out their retirement with purpose, you can look up Bruce right on his website, retirementreformation.org, and Bruce can get you a hold of me. Bruce, there's one last thing on the website we haven't talked about, and that's Senior Challenge. I'm not sure what that's about. It's a senior challenge. What's that mean? I mean, it's always a challenge being a senior, isn't it?
Well, when COVID started, one of the things that we realized was that, there was that in the early stages, probably the first 5 or 6 months, and you still hear it today, there is, seniors, they are frail, they are susceptible, and so they need to get the shot first so that they can, exist. I mean, it's just like, oh my goodness gracious, that's depressing. And so what we did was we put together a package of information. We sent that out to, lots of radio stations, and we had lots of interviews where we said, let's think about seniors in a little bit different way. Let's think about them as a resource. Let's think about them as something of value. Let's think about them as something that can really make a difference in the lives of the rest of us. And rather than, oh my goodness, poor them, they're about to die, let's get them the shot early. And I was glad to get the shot early, don't misunderstand me. But the challenge was to think about seniors in an aggressive, positive way that is representative of who they truly are.
And Christ followers in our chronologically superior folks and everybody below them, we are the hope for this nation. We are the hope for this world. Jesus in us. That is where the hope comes from. But as a retiree, Retirement Reformation's got to be your first resource. Retirementreformation.org. It's going to transform your life because it's going to give you purpose in a place where you thought it was purposelessness. Bruce, thanks so much for the conversation today. Thanks for all the tools on the Retirement Reformation website and on the app. We're so grateful. Thank you, Bruce.
One more time, thanks to you, Jim, and partnering together in iRetire4Him and being able to add the thoughts that God brought to you as you put your book together to come alongside what we have. And then if you look at the website, there's a bunch of other books that others have written on various pieces to this that may answer just a specific question that you're struggling with. And so iRetire4Him is your resource.
You've been listening to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation. I'm Jim Brangenberg, and you've been hearing from Bruce Bruinsma, the founder of the Retirement Reformation. We're Christ followers journeying from retirement to reformation, so we can ultimately say, I retire for Him.
Thanks for listening to I Retire for Him with your hosts Jim and Martha Brangenberg and Retirement Reformation founder Bruce Bruinsma. I Retire for Him is the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation. Most Christians tend to follow the world's pattern of rest and self-pampering during retirement. However, in your retirement, you can be focused on God's unique call to love, serve, and help others. This can be your best season of life if you take advantage of a life's worth of knowledge and experience and combine it with a greater freedom of time and money and invest it all in the generations both preceding and following you. The Retirement Reformation is encouraging Christians to find and follow God's call in all seasons and aspects of life, especially in retirement. Take time to sign the manifesto at retirementreformation.org and explore the wealth of resources available on our site. Join this movement of God and journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him. Go to retirementreformation.org.